Okay, we want to welcome everybody to our what I would think would be the 15th or the 16th annual Tawheed conference that we began some years ago, and we are culminating it here today, this weekend in Maryland at our good friend Zafalah's house, who's hosted us all of this time. We want to thank him and his lovely family, very generous people who have made us feel very comfortable, welcome us and guests as well to their home. So for that, over the last 15, 16 years, may Allah reward them immensely. Today is July 6th, 26th, rather, July 26th. This is Saturday, Friday rather, Friday. We had a lovely discussion yesterday. We got down here Thursday. We met with a delegation of Christians who wanted to come and sit with us and ask us some various questions regarding the differences in comparison between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Why do we think that we have the right solution to humanity's problems, and what the Bible and Jesus teach about their salvation? We recorded that. It will be up on YouTube, inshallah. And I think it was a very beautiful, pleasant discussion with some very nice people. Nobody was belligerent. Nobody was forceful. Everybody was mindful and attentive. So we thank Allah for that. Uh, Today, we want to deal with issues that we as Quran study group people have learned and gleaned and understood over the last 15 years of doing the group, as well as independently studying before that, to culminate now to see what we have learned, how we package this idea of how to defeat the Sunni Muslim fabricated religion in particular, but at the same time, any second source materials, any second source people in general. We want to show how we defeat them. We, meaning with the blessings of Allah, we are the mouthpieces, we are the propagators, we are the da'is, and we are doing that job on behalf of our Creator. We want to thank all those who made it possible for us to do this for these years. Uh, Nothing less than the arguments that we make uh, will be discussed. We don't want to, in this particular time, during the course of our discussion and question and answer, to go off into other areas that weren't discussed by the presenter. If you have a presenter that you want to call on that presented something, it wasn't clear to you, you feel free to ask that presenter to make themselves clear. Uh, a series of closing arguments will be done tomorrow, which is Saturday. Inshallah, we want to come with a real big bang to close up and wrap up this whole deal. We're saying, and I'm saying on behalf of the group, I'm personally taking this responsibility myself. I'm not speaking for everybody else, although most of us will agree. I'm speaking as Hamza Abdul Malik. I'm saying that we are the only Quran study group in existence on the planet Earth. On the planet Earth. There's no other Quran study group that exists for the sole purpose of Tawheed. And when I say Tawheed, you have to say Allah wahdahu. If you don't say Allah wahdahu when you open your MSA, NBC meetings, ICNA meetings, whatever meetings you have throughout the world, and you call them Tawheed conferences, and you have all these sheikhs and scholars and books and learned people and people of knowledge and all that. I'm saying that's all fabricated nonsense, is kufar, is shirk. If you don't have Allah wahdahu, you do not have Tawheed. We're going to make that clear to you once and for all. You can like it, you don't like it. Many people are going to say, what arrogance? What arrogance does this brother have making statements like that? Well, I'm going to show you that if you call me arrogant, you're calling Allah arrogant as well, because he's the one who makes that statement, you see, regarding himself, that if you're talking Tawheed, you must talk Tawheed wahdahu, wahdahu alone, and you must talk al-huda, al-huda. Those two must be a combination. If not, there's no Tawheed in what you say. And most people are mushriks, and so we'll make that case. So without any further ado, without going any further, we want to ask our first presenter, which is our brother Muhammad Shafiq Ali, to give his presentation, which we asked to do 15 minutes, but you can do 15, 20, 25 minutes, whatever's comfortable for you, not to do an hour, 2 hours on this particular segment, and present what you have that you think culminates your understanding of your experience with this group over the years. So brother Muhammad Shafiq, is he here? Oh, he's right here. Okay, you can take over and begin. Thank you.
Just let me know. Assalamu alaikum, everybody here. Thank you for giving me the time to present. Thank you, Brother Hamza, for a nice introduction. And my present today will be about Kitabullah, the Book of Allah. And my talk will highlight the Book of Allah as a sufficient and fully detailed guide. It will underscore the sole authority necessary in a Muslim's life, the only authority in a Muslim's life. It will also assert, and first and foremost, the principle of pure monotheism, Allah wahdahu. So let us begin with an open heart and listening capabilities and ready to absorb the wisdom and encapsulate it in the Book of Allah. The title of my talk today will be The Book and Nothing But the Book. And I will begin with my verse here. And when the Quran is being recited, listen and remain silent so that mercy may be shown to you. And the following verse will establish Allah as the sole judge and authority while underscoring the book's sufficient and fully detailed nature. It will bring prior recipients affirming this truth while admonishing us not to be of those who dispute concerning it. Quran chapter 6, verse 114. It says, "Shall I seek a judge other than Allah, when he it is who sent down the book to you fully detailed? And those whom we have given the book know that it is revealed by thy Lord with truth, so be not of the disputers." This verse begins with a rhetorical question, a certain truth, underscoring the absurdity of seeking any other authority for law, guidance, and judgment other than Allah. The phrase, when it is he who sent down the book fully detailed, i.e. the Quran, asserts that the Quran is comprehensively detailed and self-explanatory, leaving no requirement for additional details or sources for its explanation. It is highlighted by the term mufassilan, which translates as distinct, fully detailed, well-defined, and clearly explained. In addition, the recognition of previous recipients affirmed the book's truth and consistency, concluding with the admonition to be not of those who dispute. My next verse I'm going to bring up to solidify the authority and sufficiency of the Quran will be chapter 18, verse 54. And we have certainly made distinct in this Quran for mankind every kind of description, and man in most things is contentious. In this verse, the phrase, "and certainly we have made distinct in this Quran every kind of description," the term sarafna, distinct, implies turning or changing something in various ways so it becomes well-defined, ensuring the clarity of the Quran's message. The term mathal translates as descriptions or examples. Both of these terms are implemented within the message of the Quran, which ensures the Quran is made clear through diverse ways, while implementing every kind of description for the person's easy clarity of the Quran. This process leaves no room for doubt or misunderstanding. Despite this, humans still remain argumentative and contentious. But the Quran itself fully embraces these challenges and dispels them in accordance with the process of utilizing the term surafna, mathal, and mufassilan as described by Allah in his message. Verse 1854. This third verse will highlight man's accountability while reinforcing the clarity of all things in the book, which is a guidance and a mercy and good news for those who submit. Quran chapter 16, verse 89. And on that day when we raise up in every people a witness against them from among themselves and bring thee as a witness against these. And we have revealed the book to you as a clarification for all things and a guidance and a mercy and good tidings for those who submit. The verse asserts a future event pointing to the day of judgment or a significant moment in divine reckoning where witness from each nation, including the Prophet Muhammad as a witness, will be brought forth to testify about the adherence or non-adherence of the people in accordance with the message of the Quran. It will also assert the accountability of each individual on these days of reckoning. It continues to describe the Quran as a comprehensive clarification for all things, meaning nothing has been left out, that everything necessary for man's guidance is included in the Quran. The Quran is also displayed here as a mercy and good news for those who submit. This brings to the forefront the monotheistic nature of the book, leaving no room for additional details, fatwas, or any other sources for its clarification. And my next verse will be verse chapter 638. And I'm bringing forth these verses describing the book because it's the book that was sent down to us, chapter 2, verse 185, for our guidance. So we want to give some of the attributes of the book to make things clear so we can understand that there's nothing outside of this Quran that is necessary for us in order to achieve the garden or to achieve our guidance. Chapter 6, verse 38. And there is no animal on the earth, nor bird that flies on its two wings, but there are communities like yourselves. And we have not neglected anything in the book, and to their Lord they will be gathered. By drawing a parallel between human communities and animal communities, the verse underscores not only the similarities, but also the responsibilities of humans in relation to the rest of creation. This asserts a sense of stewardship and ethical treatment of all living beings. The claim that nothing is neglected in the book stresses the sufficiency of the divine revelation for guiding human conduct, further bolstering its position as a fully detailed and sufficient guide. Lastly, the reference to the final gathering reinforces the concept of accountability and the transient nature of this worldly life, urging individuals to live in accordance with what has been sent down to them, knowing that they will be answerable to their Creator in the end. And finally, in Quran chapter 5, verse 3, this day, those who have despaired your deen, this day, those who disbelieved despaired of your deen. So fear them not and fear me. This day I have perfected for you your deen and have completed my favor to you and have chosen for you Islam as your deen. This verse states that the disbelievers have realized that they cannot undermine or alter the truth of the Quran. As in chapter 41, verse 42, no falsehood can approach it from before it or behind it. It is sent down by one full of wisdom, worthy of all praise. As you can see, the Quran provides arguments that dispel man's contentious disputations and provides and lies concerning its verses. The believers are instructed not to fear them, but to fear Allah alone, again highlighting the theme of pure monotheism. The verse continues with the phrase, this day I have perfected your deen, affirming the perfect framework of Allah's system, which indicates that the teachings, laws, and guidance of Islam have been fully established. The statement completed my favor to you highlights the favor of Allah, i.e. the example, his guidance, his nitma is his guidance to you, has reached to you in a state of completion now, underscoring that the system is perfect and complete, requiring no additional details, explanations, fatwas, or sources outside of its context. The last portion of the verse, and we have chosen for you Islam as your deen, emphasizes that Islam, surrender unto Allah, has been chosen as your obedience ordained by Allah for humanity. And the monotheistic system has reached its perfection and completion until we return to Allah. And that will be closing in terms of my ayats, and I have an in closing summary here. This presentation has examined key verses elucidating to the Quran's role as a fully detailed and self-sufficient guide for humanity within the framework of monotheism. This is further affirmed by the recognition of its truth by previous recipients. It further asserts the clarity and distinctness of the Quran's message by providing every kind of description needed for humanity's guidance, despite human contentions. It also affords the reminder of a future event of divine reckoning, holding each individual accountable for his or her actions on the day of resurrection. And finally, it establishes and assures the believer that all facets of the guidance have not been neglected, and that the deen has been brought to perfection as Allah has promised. Collectively, these verses affirm that the overall sufficiency of the Quran and its authority will prevail over all other manufactured systems. The principle of monotheism, Allah wahdahu via the Quran wahdahu, negates any claim of the necessity for additional details, supplementary sources for its explanation. I want to thank everyone for giving me the time for this presentation, and may Allah grant that this presentation reach at least one person, causing him or her to ponder over Allah's message. I'd like to end with the following verses from the Quran. Chapter 4, verse 82. Will they not then meditate on the Quran? And if it was for any other than Allah, they would have found in it many discrepancies. And my next verse, chapter 6, verse 55. And thus do we make distinct the messages so that the way of the guilty may be known. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was very, very good, very concise, very, very to the point. If anybody want to ask Brother Shafiq about anything that he presented that they need more clarification on, or if not, we'll move on. I think it was very good. Mr. Carolyn, who we also know as Kalila, she has a 15-minute to 20, 25 minutes, whatever time she requires, to present the same similar type of overview of her experience in this group over the last 15 to 16 years. Right now, the floor is yours.
Salamun alaikum. Today's topic is women's dress code in Deen al-Islam. I chose this subject because it seems to receive more attention as an issue unique to Muslim women. Muslims and non-Muslims alike dwell on this issue, using it as an attempt to categorize them from other individuals. In some instances, the dress code of Muslim women have far-reaching political and social implications. Examining the reasons for such obsession is beyond the scope of this discussion. However, I wondered why such emphasis is put on the appearance of Muslim women. My purpose here is to convey a basic understanding of this issue based on the Quran alone. The conclusions drawn are exclusively based on the Quranic verses only. My purpose was to seek an understanding of the spirit and focus of the Quranic text regarding this issue in order to get an overall sense of the messages being conveyed by God. Upon analyzing the text, I observed that the predominant rule guiding women's dress code in Deen al-Islam is simply modesty, which I will detail shortly. Before the revelation of the Quran, the practice of women wearing head coverings was a long-standing tradition that spans across various cultures and religions, each with its own distinct origins. From ancient civilizations to modern societies, head coverings have served diverse purposes, ranging from religious devotion, societal status, to modesty and cultural identity. This discussion briefly delves into historical analysis of women's head coverings worn by women in different religious contexts, exploring the reasons behind this custom. In Judaism, the practice of covering the head, particularly after marriage, is rooted in religious text and interpretation. The Torah, while it does not explicitly command women to cover their heads, it's been interpreted by rabbinical authorities to encourage modesty based on the Talmud, which is the equivalent to the Islamic hadiths. The Talmud elaborates on this with various rabbinical opinions and other religious authorities, emphasizing the importance of women covering their hair. This practice is seen as an act of humility and respect towards God. Traditionally, Jewish women cover their heads with scarves or wigs, which are called shaitels, or hats. Head coverings in Christianity finds its roots in the New Testament, particularly in the writings of Paul the Apostle. In Corinthians 11:5 and 6, Paul states that women should cover their heads while praying as a sign of authority and respect for divine order. This directive became a widespread practice among early Christian women. Head coverings were associated with modesty and reverence, and the custom persisted into the 20th century, with women wearing mantillas or veils during Mass. In Islam, the headscarf, called hijab, is one of the most recognized symbols of Muslim women's identity. Its origin is connected to Sunni Islamic teachings and their interpretation of the Quranic verses concerning modesty. The hijab serves as a manifestation of a Muslim woman's faith, modesty, and privacy. It's important to note, however, that the practice of wearing the hijab varies significantly across different cultures and regions, reflecting a blend of religious adherence and cultural traditions. In Hinduism, head coverings are not universally practiced and are influenced more by cultural customs than by religious edicts. In many parts of India, women cover their heads with a sari or dupatta, especially during religious ceremonies as a mark of respect toward deities and elders. This practice also signifies modesty, although it's not explicitly mandated by Hindu scripture. This tradition has strong regional variations and is often intertwined with local customs and societal expectations. In Sikhism, covering the head is a practice mandated for both men and women as a sign of respect and humility before God, especially within the Sikh temples and during prayers. Sikh women typically cover their heads with a chuni or dupatta. This practice reflects Sikhism's commitment to equality, where both genders are expected to uphold similar standards of modesty and respect. It's important to understand that beyond religious contexts, head coverings have been adopted for secular as well as cultural reasons. In many cultures, women covered their heads as a practical response to climatic conditions, such as protection from the sun, dust, and sandstorms. Additionally, head coverings have been a symbol of national identity and resistance. For instance, during the Algerian War of Independence, the headscarf became a potent symbol of resistance against French colonial rule. By wearing it, women demonstrated solidarity with the nationalist cause and a rejection of colonial assimilation policies. The head covering also served practical purposes. It allowed women to blend into their surroundings and move around freely without drawing undue attention. It also provides a form of protection and modesty in a conservative society. Insofar as modern interpretation and controversies go, in contemporary times, some women covered their heads as an expression of religious faith and cultural heritage, whereas others viewed it as a potential tool of patriarchal control. Many debates have been had surrounding the issue of head coverings, but it symbolizes a complex interplay of religious devotion, cultural identity, personal autonomy, and political resistance. The ongoing controversies reflect broader societal debates about freedom, equality, and the role of religion in public life. However, given the foregoing, we can clearly see that the wearing of head coverings by women was an expression of modesty and served as a unifying foundation across various religions. This underlying principle plays an important and significant role in all religions and consistently remains a common thread. Therefore, we see throughout history head coverings have been a common practice among women across various major religions, often symbolizing status and modesty. Turning our focus to Din al-Islam, it's essential to understand the specific guidelines provided by God in the Quran alone regarding this practice. The Quran addresses the issue of head coverings in 3 fundamental verses: 7:26, 24:31, and 33:59. Now, to be clear, the Quran was revealed in Arabic. However, it's important to note that this is not an Arab Quran. It uses precise terms such as hijab, jilbab, and khimar, which were already familiar terms before the advent of Islam. The choice of these words is specific in the Quran, reflecting God's careful selection to convey his universal message clearly to humanity. It's important to interpret these terms based on their root meaning rather than allowing cultural or societal shifts to influence their definition. Now, speculating on why God chose these specific words over others is non-productive, and forming laws based on historical or individual practices, unless directly supported by the Quran, is neither relevant nor verifiable. We are responsible for following God's clear and fully detailed messages, which he describes as the best guidance, leaving no room for speculation. Now, with this clarity, let's delve into the 3 Quranic principles regarding head coverings found in the verses 7:26, 24:31, and 33:59. In Quran 7:26 we read, "O children of Adam, we have indeed sent down to you your garments to cover your bodies as well as for beauty. But the best garment is the garment of righteousness, taqwa, that guards against evil. That is the best. This is the messages of God that they may be mindful." Now, the key teachings from this verse are: 1. The gift of clothing. This verse acknowledges that clothing is a gift from God provided to mankind for covering their private parts and for adornment, highlighting its practical and beautification purposes. 2. Modesty and coverage. It underscores the primary role of clothing in covering private areas, emphasizing the importance of modesty in dress. 3. Righteousness. The verse highlights that the clothing of righteousness, taqwa, is the best. This points to the greater significance of inner piety and moral integrity over outward appearance. 4. Signs of God. The verse reminds Muslims that these provisions are among God's signs, encouraging them to remember and to be mindful of his guidance and blessing. In essence, Quran 7:26 teaches the importance of using clothing to maintain modesty and emphasizes that true righteousness comes from within. It encourages Muslims to focus on both their external modesty as well as their inner piety. In Quran 24:31 we read, "And say to the believing women that they should lower their gaze and restrain their sexual passions, and do not display their adornments except what appears thereof, and let them wear their coverings over their chests." Verse 24:31 provides specific guidance on modesty for women. The key teachings from this verse include: 1. Lowering the gaze and guarding chastity. Believing women are instructed to lower their gaze and guard their private parts, emphasizing modest behavior and sexual purity. 2. Modest dress. Women are advised not to reveal their adornments except for what is naturally visible. This generally applies that women should dress modestly and cover most of their bodies. 3. Covering the chest, the bosom. In this verse, God specifically instructs women to cover their chests, their bosoms, highlighting the importance of adequately covering the body part as a part of modesty. 4. Exception to the rule. Now, however, in reading the verse in totality, the verse lists specific individuals who women are not required to cover up in front of. This acknowledges that complete covering is not necessary in the presence of those individuals. And 5, behavioral modesty. Women are advised not to stamp their feet in a way that reveals hidden adornments. This suggests a broader principle of avoiding behavior that draws undue attention to oneself. And 6, repentance and success. The verse concludes with a call to all believers to turn to Allah in repentance, linking modest behavior with spiritual success. Therefore, in summary, the verse 24:31 provides comprehensive guidelines for modesty in behavior and dress for women. It emphasizes the importance of covering oneself appropriately, behaving modestly, and maintaining chastity, all while encouraging repentance and spiritual growth. In Quran 33:59 we read, "O Prophet, tell thy wives and thy daughters and the women of the believers that they shall lengthen or lower their garments. This is more proper, so that they may be known and not be given trouble. And God is ever forgiving, merciful." Verse 33:59 provides guidance on how women should dress to maintain modesty and distinguish themselves as believing women. As the wives and daughters of the Prophet Muhammad and believing women, they are commanded to lengthen or lower the bottom part of their garments. The key teachings of this verse include, number 1, instructions for covering. The verse instructs the Prophet to tell his wives, daughters, and the believing women to lengthen or lower their garments. This implies that women should lengthen the garments they wear in public. 2, the purpose of modesty. The primary purpose of this directive is to ensure that women are recognized as believing women and to protect them from harm or abuse. The verse links modest dress with safety and respect. 3, distinct identity. By covering themselves appropriately, believing women distinguish themselves from others. This distinct dress code helps in identifying them as people who adhere to the Islamic value of modesty. 4, divine forgiveness and mercy. The verse concludes with reminding believers that God is forever forgiving and merciful, emphasizing that these guidelines are meant for their benefit and well-being. In summary, 33:59 teaches women that they should lengthen or lower their garments to be recognized as believers and to protect themselves from harm. This practice serves to uphold their dignity and identity as Muslim women, while also highlighting God's forgiveness and mercy. Now, according to Lane's Lexicon, Book 3, page 917 to 918, and the Dictionary of the Holy Quran, page 182, the Arabic word used for lengthen in this verse is yudina, from the verb dana, which, among other things, carries the meaning the lower parts of a garment that are next to the ground. A jalababihina, from the word jilbab, refers to an outer garment. For example, a coat, a skirt, a dress can be a jalaba. That is to be lengthened or to let down the hem of the garment, which means no mini skirts or mini short shorts or thongs or whatever else these women wear nowadays. Moreover, this apparel is not the traditional garment described by some Muslim scholars as some special type of overgarment that needs to be worn on top of your clothes. It's clear from these verses that the universal dress code according to the Quran is righteousness and modesty and has nothing to do with women being commanded to cover their heads. However, let's delve into specific words used in the Quran that refer to covering. Khimar. Khimar is an Arabic word that means cover. A curtain is a cover, a dress is a khimar, a tablecloth that covers the top of the table is a khimar, a blanket can be used as a khimar, etc. The word khamra, used for intoxicants in the Quran in 2:219 and 590, has the same root as khimar because both cover. The khimar covers a window, a body, a table, while the Arabic word khamra, used for intoxicants, covers the intellect. Now, according to Quran 24:31, Muslim women are commanded by God to cover their chests, their bosoms. Most scholars, influenced by their hadith literature, translate this word as veil. This rendition misleads most people to believe that this verse is advocating covering of the head. The Arabic word used in the Quran for veil or shield is akinatan in 1746 and 41:5. And as we saw in 24:31, the Arabic word for chest is gaib. However, the Arabic word for head is ras, or hair is shar, and neither word is used in this verse. Moreover, the last part of the verse, 24:31, refers to women striking their feet, revealing certain details of their body. It's important to understand that whether the details of a woman's body is revealed or concealed depends on her clothing choice, not on whether her head is covered or not. Moreover, the part of the verse that speaks to revealing only that which is necessary, women who follow the first basic rule of dress code, which is righteousness, they'll have no problem making the right decision to reveal only what is necessary. Now, hijab. The word hijab is a term used by many Muslims to describe a woman's head covering that may or may not include covering their face except their eyes, and sometimes covering also one eye. Hijab is translated by some scholars as veil or yasmak. Other meanings have been translated for this word include screen, mantle, curtain, drapes, partition, division, or divider. However, the word hijab appears 8 times in the Quran. And none of the translations of the word hijab in the Quran refer to a Muslim woman's head covering that traditional Muslim scholars consider part of the dress code for Muslim women today. As we discussed earlier, hijab is an old Jewish tradition that infiltrated into the hadith books, as did many other innovations that contaminated the Sunni religion of Islam. Head coverings for Jewish women was encouraged by their rabbis and religious leaders and is still practiced today. Christian women cover their heads during many religious occasions, while nuns cover their heads all the time. In Saudi Arabia, most men cover their head not because of Islam, but because of tradition. In North Africa, all the men of the tribe of the Tuareg cover their head instead of the women. Here, the tradition has the hijab in reverse. If wearing hijab is a sign of a pious, righteous Muslim woman, Mother Teresa would have been the first woman to be counted. In brief, wearing a so-called hijab is a traditional custom and has nothing to do with Deen al-Islam. Blending tradition with Deen al-Islam is considered idol worship because it means favoring traditional practices over God's commandments. When tradition overrides God's messages, it indicates a shift away from divine guidance and turning towards something else for guidance. In conclusion, God has given us 3 basic rules for women's dress code according to the Quran. 1. The best garment is the garment of righteousness, taqwa. 2. Whenever you dress, cover your chest or your bosom. And 3. Lengthen your garments. It's clear from these 3 verses that the universal dress code according to the Quran is righteousness and modesty and has nothing to do with women being required to cover their heads. For some Sunni scholars, these 3 basic rules are not enough, and they look to the Hadith for further guidance. God could have given us more details, however, but with these 3 basic rules, taqwa being the best garment, an individual who fears their Lord automatically knows the proper way to dress. Any attempt to supplement or subvert these basic rules is an attempt to correct or improve on God's authority. This metaphorical garment described in 726 is portrayed as the best attire one can wear, surpassing any material fabric in its value and importance. Quranic verses often employ such imagery to convey deeper spiritual truths and moral guidance, and understanding this particular metaphor sheds light on the fundamental principles of Islamic ethics and piety. Verse 726 draws a stark contrast between physical clothing, which serves the basic functions of modesty and adornment, and the clothing of righteousness, which is described as superior. Here, righteousness, taqwa, is elevated as the pinnacle of spiritual adornment or covering, in that it surpasses the external manifestations of dress and appearance. The verse suggests that while physical clothing is necessary for societal norms and modesty, it is righteousness that truly enhances the inner self and brings one closer to God. Throughout the Quran, righteousness is praised as a virtue that distinguishes believers. Surah Baqarah specifically, 2:177, defines it broadly as trust in Allah, the last day, and moral conduct including charity and kindness toward others. This holistic view emphasizes that righteousness is more than a ritualistic observance. It involves a genuine transformation of character and behavior. The metaphor of the garment of righteousness highlights its transformative power and moral integrity. Just as physical clothing protects and adorns the body, righteousness shields the soul from spiritual harm and beautifies character. It represents a divine gift bestowed upon those who earnestly seek God's pleasure and follow His guidance. The metaphor also underscores the temporary nature of material wealth and possessions compared to the enduring value of righteousness. While physical garments wear out, the garment of righteousness endures as a source of spiritual strength and guidance, transcending cultural boundaries and material concerns. In a practical sense, wearing the garment of righteousness involves fostering community, promoting justice, and upholding ethical principles in personal and social contexts. It encourages integrity, compassion, and humility, contributing to a more harmonious society. This symbolic message serves as a guiding principle for Muslims committed to living by the values of Deen al-Islam and placing their trust in God alone. It encourages a profound dedication to piety and moral responsibility, prioritizing spiritual virtues rather than emphasizing prescribed physical dress codes like head coverings for Muslim women, as advocated by Sunni scholars within the traditional man-made Arab religion of Islam. May God grant us the strength to remain steadfast on the straight path He has illuminated for us in His book, safeguarding us from deviation and guiding us always toward righteousness. This message, described in the Book of God as a metaphorical garment, serves as a guiding light for Muslims striving to embody the values of Deen al-Islam in their lives, promoting a deeper understanding of piety and moral responsibility, and not a physical dress code for Muslim women to cover their heads. Thank you for listening. La ilaha illallah wa ana minal muslimina. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Okay, we want to thank our good sister Carolyn Kalila. We know her as well for such a wonderful, as she's been known to create these very creative and visual presentations that's easy on the eye, easy on the mind, easy to understand. So we want to thank her again for such a wonderful job. I think it was very excellent. I had taken some notes earlier because I was getting a little confused. I thought she was advocating that the hijab was a head covering. And so I know that there's no such thing as head covering, but she made that crystal clear when she spoke about hijab, that it's not a head covering and one thing after the other. So she rounded that off. Excellent. And so we want to thank her for a lovely presentation. Anybody would like to comment, ask her questions about her presentation, they can feel free to do that at this moment. Anybody want to comment on her, ask her anything specifically about head covering? Don't hold it back later and say something later. She's here now, ask her. I think it was perfected, a perfection in the work that she's known to do. So that's my personal opinion. Anybody?
How come the code or what's considered right is so different? So many different places, so many different, cities, where does that all come from, the differences?
Well, most of the time,
Excuse me 1 second. She just asked a question. I don't know if everybody heard it. Can you repeat the question and answer it?
she was asking pretty much, what's the differences, why people are, I'm paraphrasing, why people are wearing different things in different countries and different colors, and why is it all not one consistent way of dressing? My understanding is simply it boils down to culture. As I was saying in my presentation, it boils down to culture, traditions, based on where you live, your tradition or your culture might be one way, whereas in another country, your culture and tradition might, be expressed in a different way. So that's how you get the variations in colors and dress codes and things of that nature. And they deviate from what Allah has prescribed for us in the Quran, which is simply modesty.
Just to add to that, I remember back in the day when I was much younger, women used to come out with these bonnets on, these head things on with nets hanging down. That was a fashion piece for them. They had on some little black thing with nets hanging down, and it wasn't because they were grieving or mourning because of some loss, but that was a fashion status. It was a status piece. You had on glasses, dresses, gloves and so forth. And so as society got more promiscuous, they discarded those kind of things, but that was a traditional kind of thing that people wore. So as she just said, cultural had a lot of things to do with whether you wrap your head, you didn't wrap your head in anything, but Quran does not advocate the head covering, which has been made clear. Anybody else? Okay, so if there's nobody else, we will ask the next presenter to step forward and make their presentation. I think that's you, Saeed. And we would ask you to speak up so that we can hear you. He's been with us from the inception of this group, and you might see him and you might have heard him, but you might not have heard much from him. But over the course of time, he's gotten up his ability to be vocal, to be involved in the conversations more forcefully. And today he's going to demonstrate that with his closing statement that he has now harbored all of this information that he has and much more. And he'll present us a nice package, hopefully, inshallah. With that, Saeed, we'll ask you to go ahead and make your presentation.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Shafiq and Khalil gave a very informative presentation. I was very moved by it, but as for me, like I'm gonna say, I'm not a quiet person. I'm a very observant person, and I'm not a talkative person. But sometimes, you may hit my button and I may say things, you see, in response to whatever you say. But I'm not gonna make a presentation today. But I'm working on something right now that the contents of which is about the soul or the self. It's about the soul and the self, where Allah speaks about in 66:6. Save yourself. Save yourself. And it really starts at, "Oh, you who believe, save yourself and your families from the fire, whose flame, whose fuel is men and stone. Over it are angels, stern and strong. They do not disobey Allah in that which He commands them, but do as they are commanded. And as the angels are to do what Allah has commanded, so is man to do as Allah has commanded him. Save your soul. You see, so I'm putting together an article and a study on about the soul, because we want to know, well, save the soul. How do we save the soul? You have to know this. You have to know how to save the soul. You have to know how to guard the soul from evil for that day of return to your Lord, you see? So you have to have this knowledge, which is in the Quran, how to save the self. Save yourself. And I'm working on it, I'm working on this article. I'm studying this article in a later date, I'm going to make it known my works on this on this subject. But as for the day, I'm not going to do a presentation. Like I said again, I was very, very inspired by Shafiq's and Khalil's presentation today. And hopefully in the future, I'll be able to stand up and get some words. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Before you go, anybody want to ask him regarding anything he just said? He said the importance of saving your soul. Can you give us any idea of at least one methodology that the Quran advocates that will allow a person to save their soul? Can you give us at least one verse that will direct us in that way? One verse.
I would say to everyone that the first information that they should look at is Tawheed. You see, Tawheed, repentance. You see, and that will give you some information on how to guard yourself. Guard yourself from the fire. You and your family both. You see, you and your family both. But I'm focusing on myself first. Because the law has already instructed us that those of your families and your wives who are the doers of good, that they're gonna be in the company of the righteous. He will reunite you with them. So that's why it's very important that one save himself. You see? You see, because that requires you saving your family also. I don't have the verse right now. You got the verse, Shafi?
Well, one verse that came to mind when you spoke about that was chapter 2, verse 21, where it says, "O men, O mankind, serve your Lord who created you and those before you, so that you may guard against evil," because
Yeah.
you were speaking about guarding against evil.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 6, verse 66. This is what you want. Chapter 6, verse 66.
Yeah, read it. Yeah, you got it right there, read it.
It says, "And thy people called it a lie."
Is it 66:6?
66:6. I'm sorry. That's 666. 66:6. "O you believe, save yourselves and your families from the fire whose fuel is men and stones. Over it are angels stern and strong. They do not disobey Allah in that which he has commanded them, but they do as they're commanded."
That's the verse you were talking about.
Yeah,
That's the one he was talking about.
Okay, that's one of them. All right, so that is exactly the proof text. One of them. There's another one, which you probably will reveal to us later, but commands you to save yourself and your family from the fuel that is destined for the disbeliever. Anybody else would ask Brother Shafiq a question? No? Well, then we'll move on.